Do you ever feel nostalgic for the era when we wore polyester suits that felt like slow cookers, or voluntarily slathered on baby oil to get a tan? The 70s didn't favor subtlety. It was an era of fearless, bold experimentation. Today, let's revisit the 25 most bizarre beauty trends, things we once swore we'd never try until we did. Electric blue eyeshadow. The 70s had no room for subtlety, and nothing was more standout and loud than electric blue eyeshadow. The color made a statement. Electric blue eyeshadow back then was like war paint. The application was neither gentle nor subtle. Instead of applying a thin layer, the eyeshadow was applied with strong intensity. Imagine a vibrant, almost neon blue layer of powder stretching from the upper eyelid all the way up to the brow bone. It was truly a neon explosion on the face, making the eyes undeniably stand out. This eyeshadow was not used alone, but was often combined to create the ultimate 70s look. It frequently came with frosted pink lips and feathered hair. It truly couldn't be mistaken for the bold style of the era. However, this electric blue eyeshadow epidemic also had its annoying limitations. Heavily applied eyeshadow, especially during the summer, tended to start melting. Imagine that blue eyeshadow gently running down your cheekbones as you enjoy a hot afternoon. Besides the risk of melting, the shimmer component of the eyeshadow also caused significant discomfort. Tiny sparkling shimmer particles could fall down, stick to the facial skin, or worse, fall into the eyes, causing extreme itchiness. But for the beauty warriors of the 70s, these minor inconveniences were nothing compared to achieving a look as striking as a disco star. Tickle Roll-On Deodorant. The culture surrounding Tickle was strongly fueled by massive marketing campaigns. Tickle advertisements were famous for showing young girls giggling and spinning. The ads made applying deodorant the highlight of their day. It transformed a boring hygiene routine into an exciting and charming moment. This product was considered a cultural icon of the 70s, regarded as the holy grail of personal hygiene at the time. What made Tickle unique and sought after was its revolutionary design. It was the first roll-on deodorant to feature a large, wide roller ball. The size of this roller ball was a major highlight. Tickle bottles came in bright neon colors, making them visually appealing and easily noticeable on the bathroom shelf. Owning a neon Tickle bottle was seen as participating in a popular trend. Tickle's giant roller ball was considered special for its ability to provide wide and quick coverage. Beyond the unique design, Tickle's scent was also described as peculiar. This strong scent, while perhaps considered abnormal by some, was loved by others because it was distinct and memorable. Using Tickle meant you knew what was fashionable and weren't afraid to show it. It became an essential item in gym bags or backpacks. Its peculiar and strong scent was also part of the 70s experience. Everything had to be standout and different. Although initially ridiculed for its oversized dimensions and strange scent, Tickle was quickly accepted and became a part of the personal hygiene ritual, demonstrating that sometimes boldness and difference are exactly what the public is looking for. In Hair Lightener. In was advertised as the poor man's ticket to California surfer blonde hair. It promised something simple yet glamorous, sun-kissed highlights without having to spend money at a salon. For teenagers craving that bright, natural look, In seemed like the perfect solution to achieve that sparkle. In evoked images of endless summer days, of carefree girls with natural, voluminous hair. The reality was often far from that golden promise. In rarely delivered the desired golden blonde hue. Instead, the product often turned the user's hair orange, or, more accurately, brassy orange. If you've experienced it, let me know. For those with brown, red, or any color other than natural blonde hair, the result was often a rusty color. There are stories saying the user's hair looked as if it had been attacked by a citrus juicer. In unpredictably changed the hair color, leaving the hair dry and brittle. Many women regretted using this product immediately after. The hair texture was stripped of moisture, becoming brittle and hard to manage. In had a strange citrus chemical smell, like a mixture of half lemon cleaner and half peroxide. This pungent, eye-stinging odor did not easily disappear. It clung to the hair, lingering for days, despite efforts to wash it out. Noxzema Cream. Noxzema Cream was a skincare product, a panacea for all dermatological issues. It was considered a multi-purpose savior. Noxzema was described as a cream that was characteristically cold-cooling, tingling, and medicinal smelling. Although today we tend to look for gentle products, in the 70s, skincare had to be an experience you could feel. Noxzema truly delivered that sensation. Noxzema was used for everything. It was used to treat sunburn, soothing skin damaged after sun exposure. It was a common solution for acne, based on the belief that the medicinal smell and tingling sensation were signs that it was killing bacteria. Or simply, when you felt generally uncomfortable, Noxzema was applied to provide a refreshing feeling. The key ingredient that provided this unique effect was menthol. Menthol caused the skin to react in two ways simultaneously. It felt both freezing and burning at the same time. This sensation was a confirmation that the product was working, an experience many users at the time trusted. Using Noxzema also came with certain troubles. If the user applied too much cream, Noxzema would start to peel off like dried glue. Instead of having soft skin, you would have white, dry patches of cream, causing discomfort when you had to scrape them off. Tanning with baby oil. Do you remember that the 70s decade was the era that worshipped tanned skin? The most bizarre tanning method of that time was sunbathing using baby oil. This tanning method was described as using a sun protection factor of SPF 00, meaning there was absolutely no protection. The goal was not gradual tanning, but to get tanned as quickly as possible. This sunbathing procedure was extremely simple but inherently dangerous. To speed up the process, people would lie out in the yard, covered in baby oil. Baby oil not only softened the skin, but also acted as a sun-concentrating fluid, like a lens, absorbing maximum heat and sunlight. To enhance the effect, a reflective sun shield was often used. This shield was placed under the chin or around the face, concentrating additional sunlight onto the face and neck. This was a serious ritual, often lasting many hours under the harshest sun. The expected result of a long day of sun exposure was that your skin turned dark brown and felt crispy. The skin was severely damaged by high-level sunburn. The inevitable consequence was skin peeling, a process described as a rite of passage in beauty culture. Although skin peeling was very painful and left behind flaking patches of skin, it was proof that the person had successfully achieved a tan. If this video brings back beautiful memories, don't forget to hit the hype button below. Your support helps nostalgic content like this live on. The feathered hair frenzy. The feathered hair craze swept across America, inspired by the look of Farrah Fawcett. This perfectly wind-swept, wavy hairstyle became a phenomenon, experimented with by both girls and some boys. It offered a carefree, athletic, and extremely glamorous look, making people feel like they had just stepped off a California beach. Farrah Fawcett turned this hairstyle into a symbol of unstoppable confidence. Achieving this perfect feathered look was not easy. It required a complicated styling process and extraordinary effort. The procedure began with carefully blow-drying the hair, followed by the step of flipping the hair, using a round brush and a hairdryer to create the outward curl backward. After achieving the desired shape, the hair needed to be strongly hairsprayed to hold the style. And most importantly, repeating this process for all layers of hair to ensure every strand was perfectly positioned, creating the soft, feathered effect. When styled correctly, feathered hair gave the person an unstoppable feeling. It was the perfect combination of volume and movement. But this perfect look was extremely sensitive to humidity. When humidity rose, all the effort put into the drying, flipping, and spraying process would collapse miserably. The hair would lose its perfect wavy shape, turning into an unruly, frizzy mess. Having to constantly battle the weather to maintain the hairstyle was a never-ending fight. Breeze Astringent. The concept of skincare in the 70s was that you had to feel the product working, and Breeze did that intensely. Accepting the pain demonstrated a fearless spirit and a willingness to endure anything. Breeze Astringent was designed to attack facial grease unsparingly. This product didn't just remove oil. Its effect was so strong that it made the oil on the skin evaporate, causing the face to switch from oily to a freezing cold state. Users immediately felt the product working. Initially, it was a tingling sensation, but it quickly transformed into an intense, stinging feeling. This was the definite sign that the product was deep cleaning. The telltale sign of someone using Breeze Astringent was obvious. When applied to the skin, the user's eyes would water, and the skin might turn red due to the strong reaction. Its medicinal scent was pungent. The sensation was akin to disinfecting your face with alcohol, an extremely potent experience. Although this sensation was painful and uncomfortable, those who used it believed this was the only way to achieve genuinely clean skin. Using sea breeze was considered a brave act. Girls back then were seen as warriors if they could withstand the intense burning sensation the product delivered. The wedge hairstyle. The wedge hairstyle, also known as the Dorothy Hamill hairstyle, was defined in the mid-70s, specifically in 1974, created by a student of Vidal Sassoon. However, it was figure skater Dorothy Hamill who truly made it famous when she won the Olympic gold medal in 1976. Following Hamill's victory, her wedge haircut became a trend, causing American girls to rush to salons demanding, "Give me the Dorothy now." The wedge was seen as the best combination of both worlds, easy to maintain, yet stylish enough to make someone feel like a star. The wedge was an athletic, fresh haircut that easily created a neat look. However, this ease was only true on paper or on the head of Dorothy Hamill, who had her own beauty team. For the average teenager, maintaining this hairstyle required considerable care and technique. This hairstyle needed constant maintenance to retain the perfect wedge shape. Every morning, users needed a powerful hairdryer, likened to a jet engine, to shape the layers of hair so they flipped inward precisely. If the hair didn't flip inward as desired, the person would look like a confused mushroom. Styling failure could transform the sporty, sharp look into an unfortunate clumsiness. The Perm Revolution. By the end of the 70s, perming hair was no longer just for women. Men also joined this revolution. Perming provided the desired volume and texture, fitting the strong, unapologetic style. This perm revolution changed the face of hair salons. The results of perming varied widely. Depending on the type of chemical and the size of the rollers, the hair could achieve anything from seductive soft waves to a state that looked completely like a poodle. One of the signature styles was the layered perm, where the top section of hair remained smooth, while the bottom section featured large, prominent curls. In contrast to this voluminous curly style, those following the punk rock movement chose a different form of self-expression. They cut their hair short, spiked it up, and dyed it various neon colors, challenging all traditional hair rules. Although the aesthetic results might be debatable, the most hated factor of perming was the smell. The perming process used strong chemicals that created a pungent, eye-stinging chemical odor. This unpleasant smell was not easily eliminated. It permeated the hair, clothes, and scalp, and could linger for days after the procedure was complete. This chemical smell was the price paid for the voluminous look and permanent curls. The frosted lipstick takeover. The 70s had an intense love affair with frost, and this was most evident on the lips. The rise of frosted lipstick was a phenomenon. It wasn't just a hint of sparkle, it was a layer of shimmering, icy frost. This frost layer was everywhere, from pale pink to metallic silver. The fashion rule of this era was simple. If your lips don't sparkle like a disco ball, you haven't done it right. Frosted lipstick was an indispensable element to complete the dazzling and bold disco style. It conveyed a feeling of boldness, coolness, and glamour. Frosted pink was commonly used. Girls often combined this frosted lipstick with electric blue eyeshadow and feathered hair to create the ultimate 70s look. Although frosted lipstick was disliked for its unnatural appearance and sometimes looking too garish in daylight. However, it was widely experimented with because it promised prominence and alignment with the prevailing trends. It symbolized freedom in makeup, where the goal was to attract attention rather than harmony. Frosted lipstick was a reflection of the era's fascination with metallic materials and light in fashion. Do you still have any photos of your most outrageous 70s hairstyle? Share your memories. Prell Shampoo. Prell was famous for its glaring green color, a bright, almost radioactive green, and when squeezed out, the liquid looked like a block of slime. This shampoo offered a glamorous promise. Hair would achieve incredible volume and shine. Prell created such an enormous amount of lather that people joked it was strong enough to wash a station wagon, symbolizing the absolute belief in the product's powerful cleaning ability. However, the fairy tale ended right in the shower. Prell seemed to work too effectively. It cleaned so strongly that it stripped every trace of life from the user's hair. The result was the terrible sensation of hair being squeaky clean. This was the unmistakable sign of an impending disaster. The hair was not only dry and brittle, but also static-prone for days afterward. Instead of getting the advertised luxurious hair, all that remained was a crispy failure. Prell is a prime example of the price the previous generation had to pay for pursuing an absurdly clean hair in this era of bold experimentation. Brush rollers. Before modern curling irons and heat tools existed, brush rollers were the medieval artifacts that 70s girls voluntarily slept with. They were an indispensable part of the hair ritual to achieve voluminous waves like Farrah Fawcett. The process of using brush rollers was difficult. Users had to roll their hair tightly into the rollers, then secure them with sharp metal clips. The entire process required dexterity and a large amount of endurance. Users had to sleep with these rollers, an experience likened to lying in a torture chamber. The goal was to hope to wake up in the morning with perfect Farrah Fawcett hair. Like the other products, this bizarre beauty trend disappointed many girls. The result was often just a scalp full of regret. The curls were either ineffective or, worse, the curls were uneven, tangled, and lacked clear shape. Although disliked for the discomfort of sleeping in them and the frequent failed results, brush rollers remained a popular tool because they were the only means to achieve volume without resorting to perming chemicals. Quick tanner. Instead of a natural golden brown tan, QT delivered splotchy orange skin. QT Quick Tanner promised to provide a healthy tan without the need for sun exposure. The advertising sold users the idea of a quick and safe solution to achieve a radiant look. However, in reality, QT should have been called questionable skin tone. This splotchiness was particularly noticeable and unsightly in dry areas like the elbows and knees. Another major issue was that QT left stains on the palms of the hands. Despite efforts to wash the hands, these orange stains persisted, betraying the fact that you had used a fake tanning product. Do you remember its smell? It smelled like chemical pancake syrup, a pungent and unpleasant odor that lingered for days. Once applied to the skin, this product was almost impossible to scrub off. Users had to endure the strange skin color and scent until the product faded naturally. Despite the artificial orange color and unpleasant odor, surprisingly, QT remained a popular choice. Many chose it to get a tan without having to suffer sunburn from baby oil. People accepted the risk of being splotchy and smelling like pancake syrup just for the promise of a sunless tan. Corduroy pants and jackets. In the treasury of 70s materials, corduroy held a special place, likened to the cool kid in the fashion neighborhood, an item you absolutely had to own at least one piece of. The appeal of corduroy lay in the unique combination of durability and comfort. It was sturdy yet soft, and always maintained a stylish appearance. Corduroy pants and jackets represented a style that was both practical and rugged enough for the outdoors to create a cool factor that brought confidence when dressing nicely to go out. However, the most memorable characteristic of corduroy was the auditory experience it provided. When the wearer moved, the material emitted a characteristic swish-swish sound, repeating like an echoing reminder in the space. This sound was not just fabric rubbing, it was a strong declaration, asserting that the wearer was sporting a serious style that could not be ignored. Like a personal soundtrack, the swish-swish sound of corduroy became an indispensable hallmark, further reinforcing the image of an era where fashion trends were all about fearless, bold experimentation. This item contributed to the rich diversity, from relaxed bohemian style to sleek and sporty looks. Aviator glasses. Aviator glasses were not just a pair of ordinary sunglasses. They were the epitome of cool, stylish, and sexy in the 70s. With sleek metal frames and tinted lenses, aviators quickly became a status symbol, an accessory that made an immediate statement. The feature that made aviators so captivating was the mystery and edge they conveyed. They afforded the wearer the ultimate privilege of the era, the ability to look around without anyone knowing where you were looking. This accessory suggested control, as if the wearer had their life mastered. Paired with other trends like headscarves and oversized sunglasses, aviators reinforced the luxurious, cool, and slightly mysterious look. They didn't just shield the eyes from the sun, they created a psychological screen, a subtle barrier between the wearer and the world. In a decade famous for absolute confidence, wearing aviator glasses was a quiet way to assert power and allure, turning moments of observation into an art. If you could go back in time and stop yourself from trying one of these products, which one would you choose? Share a product you once used. Peasant blouses. Peasant blouses were a key trend that provided the embroidered elegance, lightness, and looseness of the bohemian style. This trend was not random. It was inspired by traditional Eastern European folk attire. Subsequently, famous designers like Yves Saint Laurent popularized them widely, transforming these ethnic-inspired shirts into high fashion. Peasant blouses were typically made from soft cotton or linen, featuring delicate embroidery, drawstring necklines, and slightly puffed sleeves. They offered a feeling of comfort and aligned with the 70s spirit of self-expression. Peasant blouses created a relaxed, easy, and carefree look, perfect for women who wanted to escape the tight, rigid outfits of the previous decade. They were the ideal choice to pair with flared jeans. This trend gradually lost appeal among those who favored a more sharp, reserved style, because peasant blouses were too loose and had an informal appearance. Noxzema. They were widely experimented with because they embodied the free, flowing spirit of the era. They helped the wearer feel like they were part of a strong cultural and fashion movement, breaking away from constraints. Jumpsuits. Jumpsuits were considered one of the most exciting fashion inventions of the 70s, a bold and loud outfit worn by the biggest celebrities of the time. Jumpsuits were a fashion dream because they promised elegance and neatness with just a single zipper. They created the illusion that the wearer had every aspect of their life and personal style under control. This item was worn by Elvis, David Bowie, Cher, and Farrah Fawcett. Women's jumpsuits were often form-fitting, flared, and extremely glamorous, perfect for a night out and making them feel invincible. For men, jumpsuits were a statement of absolute confidence. The flared silhouette of jumpsuits paired with platform shoes created incredible height and fluidity on the dance floor. This illusion of perfection and convenience instantly shattered when the wearer faced the need to use the restroom. This was the moment the jumpsuit became the fashion trap. Going to the toilet in a jumpsuit was humorously but accurately likened to escaping an escape room. The wearer had to struggle with zippers and buttons, having to nearly undress completely. This difficulty was multiplied many times over when you were in a public restroom, having to try not to let the jumpsuit touch the floor. For tall people, most jumpsuits also caused them to suffer from a severe wedgie and cold wrists due to insufficient length. Platform shoes. They were accessories that provided impressive height and were an indispensable symbol of the disco era. This trend peaked in the 70s, embodying a bold, daring, and unapologetic style. Platform shoes were designed to elevate the wearer to a new level, quite literally. They were not merely shoes, they were a tool that helped to elevate every outfit and make the wearer stand out in the crowd. No one can mention platform shoes without remembering John Travolta. His image in Saturday Night Fever with white platform shoes cemented them as the ultimate disco footwear. These shoes were not only visually appealing, but also added sophistication and functionality. Strangely, despite providing significant height, they were not as uncomfortable as traditional high heels, thanks to the uniformly thick sole. This allowed disco lovers to dance all night long without suffering from heel pain. Despite their bold and beloved appearance, platform shoes also carried the inherent risk of injury they presented. The high, clunky soles made walking quickly dangerous. Polyester leisure suits. Step into any disco dance floor in the 70s and you would see polyester leisure suits as the defining attire for men's fashion. This two-piece suit was made from 100% double-knit polyester, a material considered revolutionary at the time. They usually came with wide lapels, dramatically stretched out, and flared pants, matching colors that signaled a readiness to party. These suits were called polyester masterpieces by designers. They often featured bright, even vibrant colors, like chartreuse or royal blue, practically screaming, "Look at me." Aesthetically, they looked sleek, making the wearer appear to have their life under control, especially since the fabric often shimmered under the disco lights. Who knew that behind that splendid appearance lay a harsh reality? The polyester material turned them into a physical disaster. When worn, The suit felt like climbing into a plastic bag. The biggest problem was breathability. Polyester is not breathable. You would sweat just by looking at it, let alone dancing. If you dared to join the frenzy of the dance floor under the disco lights, you were essentially wearing a slow cooker. The temperature and humidity inside the suit increased terribly, creating a mobile sauna. Furthermore, double-knit polyester did not move flexibly, also making the wearer unable to move naturally. Every step, every spin was a battle against the stiffness of this material.
Tube tops.
Tube tops were a colorful fashion item, a form-fitting shirt without shoulder straps. This was a women's favorite item that every guy knew about. The popularity of tube tops was driven by media icons like Suzanne Summers, who wore them on the famous show The Love Boat. Her appearance on television cemented the status of tube tops as an appealing and distinctly 70s fashion item. This piece of personal fashion was part of a larger movement, the carefree braless style. This style represented a shift in the era where women began to dress for themselves more than anything else, challenging old norms. Tube tops required a certain level of confidence to wear, and they were often worn for daily activities or during nights out, displaying the wearer's carefree nature and glamour. Despite the eye-catching and glamorous look, tube tops also caused anxiety for the wearer due to the risk of easily slipping down. Wearers had to constantly adjust and pull the shirt up to ensure it stayed in place. However, this minor inconvenience did not deter their popularity. Tube tops were still experimented with because they symbolized the freedom, liberation, and the boldest fashion style of the decade.
Wide collars. For men's fashion, no statement was clearer than oversized wide collars. The wider the collar, the cooler the man. These collars often didn't just stop at the neck. They stretched out, extending almost to the shoulders. Wearing a shirt with an oversized collar made one feel ready for anything, from a business meeting to a disco dance floor. The drama in the design created a fun and liberated look, perfectly aligned with the boundary-breaking spirit of this decade. In fact, the width of the collars sometimes reached absurd levels, to the extent that they looked as if the wearer was preparing for takeoff. This was an unmistakable style of absolute confidence, where the boundaries between masculine and feminine styles were blurring, and excess was considered moderation. Wide collars transformed the man into a sculptural figure, highlighting his swagger and willingness to be noticed. Crochet Everything. This fashion trend quickly became a cultural wave, a movement you couldn't escape in the 70s. Its popularity spread so widely that almost everyone owned and wore crochet items, including hats, bags, vests, and cloaks. This trend strongly resonated with the era's DIY spirit, conveying a feeling of being handmade, unique, warm, and intimate like a part of the family. Crochet was the perfect embodiment of the transition between relaxed bohemian style and high fashion. Fashion icons elevated this material. Jane Birkin used them to highlight her comfortable and carefree bohemian style, while Cher transformed crochet items into mesmerizing designs that looked like genuine high fashion. This material offered a loose, comfortable appearance, symbolizing the self-expression and carefree spirit of the 70s. Wearing a crochet cloak was like carrying a piece of handcrafted art, evoking a sense of adventure and nostalgia, while demonstrating strong individuality in a period where style boundaries were broken. The strong proliferation of crochet items proves that the 70s was a time when people dressed for themselves more than anything else. Ayds diet candy.
Ayds diet candy was a strange product of the 70s, an era where the dieting industry was booming. This candy had a chocolate flavor and promised to curb appetite using a mysterious scientifically advertised ingredient. This diet candy had an extremely unfortunate name, which was Ayds. Although the name originated from the word AIDS, it was misleading and uncomfortable. Regarding the taste, it was described as awful. It tasted like stale Tootsie Rolls that had been dipped in perfume. Users were instructed to consume one piece with a cup of hot water before meals. This product surprisingly delivered on its promise. It only made the users lose their appetite because of the taste itself. The feeling of disgust from eating the candy overwhelmed any hunger pangs. Although users noticed the controversial name and terrible taste, it was still experimented with because of the promise of an easy weight loss solution. This gives us another insight into the 70s. Many people were truly willing to try anything to fit the aesthetic standard.
Has a memory ever flashed through your mind making you gasp? Am I really that old already? Things that used to be familiar, from how we listen to music, watch TV, to habits that seem like just yesterday, now suddenly become undeniable signs of middle age. In this video, let's look back at 25 things that instantly make you realize how fast time has flown. Struggling with tangled phone cords? Do you remember the days when communicating required patience and sometimes physical strength? Before mobile phones and cordless landlines became popular, everyone owned a landline phone, often a rotary phone or an early push-button type. No matter how careful you were, no matter how much you swore you would never twirl the receiver while talking, eventually that cord would get tangled into an inextricable mess. It was an essential part of life. Sometimes these cords were even stretched so far that you had to stand right against the wall while chatting. When you tried to untangle it, you had to smooth it out with your hands, twist it back, and stretch it. Furthermore, these old phones also demanded a good memory. To call someone, you had to dial the number from memory. Unless you carried a small address book or used a bulky phone book, you relied on your ability to remember long sequences of numbers. This is unlike today, where mobile phones have replaced both those tools and store hundreds of numbers with just one touch. The younger generation today probably doesn't understand the concept of the long, continuous dial tone signaling the line is ready. Paid long-distance calls. Imagine a world where calling grandparents in another state or friends who moved far away was a financial decision that required careful consideration. That was the reality for those who grew up before the mobile era. Today, mobile phones have completely replaced that outdated system. Most mobile plans or even internet calling apps offer unlimited nationwide calls for the same fixed monthly price. But in the 80s and before, long-distance calling was a luxury item. You had to be conscious of every minute ticking by because every second meant the bill would increase. Long-distance calls were often charged at expensive rates, especially if you called during the daytime. Families often had to wait until off-peak hours in the evening or weekends to make important calls to save money. If you were a teenager wanting to talk to a girlfriend in another city, you had to make a silent bargain with your parents, or be ready to face their wrath when the phone bill arrived. The feeling of anxiety as the clock ticked and you knew you had exceeded your budget is an unforgettable experience for the 80s generation. The disappearance of long-distance charges is one of the biggest changes, helping us realize we lived through a completely different era. Hitting the TV to see better. Let's remember the old, heavy box TVs, large pieces of furniture that were as heavy as a naval destroyer. They not only occupied a corner of the living room, but also required a special ritual whenever the signal was fuzzy. What was that ritual? It was hitting the sides or the top of the TV forcefully to try and regain a clear signal. We did that every day. The rough texture of the TV cabinet, the dry thud sound when your hand hit the wood or plastic layer. Amazingly, this actually worked. No one truly knew why applying physical force helped improve the image, but it was a universal and effective troubleshooting method at the time. When the image was full of static snow or the colors were jumbled, the first and almost instinctive reaction of any viewer from the 80s was to gently tap the device. These TVs were often old wooden console TVs. Next to them, there were often the necessary metal tables so you could eat dinner while watching your favorite show. Sometimes these tables were stored under the sofa or in the closet, or if your family was more sophisticated, you had a dedicated stand. But wherever they were, the ritual of hitting the TV was part of the entertainment life. The necessity of hitting the TV has disappeared entirely in the digital age. Today, flat, light TVs use digital signals. Either you have a clear signal or you have no signal at all. There is no slightly clear or slightly fuzzy. If the screen is faulty, you can't hit it. You can only call warranty service or buy a new one. Baby Jessica is grown up. There are news stories that make the whole country, and even the world, hold its breath and glue its eyes to the TV screen. The story of baby Jessica was one of the biggest, a major news event in October 1987. Baby Jessica McClure, then only 18 months old, fell down a 22-foot well in Midland, Texas. The entire campaign to rescue her became a nonstop, 56-hour reality TV show, drawing the attention and prayers of millions. The whole world watched as rescue teams dug the earth and tried to reach the little girl. Ultimately, Jessica was successfully rescued. Look at the time that has passed since that shocking event. Jessica, once a symbol of global hope and concern, is now 37 years old. She is married and is the mother of 2 children, one 15 and one 13 years old. The news event we anxiously and emotionally followed years ago is now so distant that its main character has no memory whatsoever of the terrifying incident. Going to the record store. In the age before digital music downloads and streaming, finding music was a physical experience. Older individuals will recall the joy of spending hours at record stores. This was not just a shopping destination, it was a cultural gathering place where you searched for your favorite band, discovered new artists, or hunted for the latest hit. Previously, even large retail chains like Target, Kmart, and Walmart had separate music sections. However, with the popularity of digital download options and subsequently streaming services, specialized music stores have almost completely disappeared. What the digital download generation can never understand is the sensory experience of buying an album. It is the smell of the album when you first open it. The smell of new cardboard, vinyl, or cassette tape, a distinctive aroma associated with the joy of musical discovery. We remember flipping through shelves of vinyl records or cassette tapes, checking the back of the album cover for the track list and artist photos. It was a time-consuming process, but it was part of the connection to the music. Renting VHS at the store? In the 80s, Friday or Saturday night, home entertainment did not involve scrolling through complicated app interfaces. Instead, it was a trip to the video rental store. This was an important part of the entertainment routine for many families. These stores were often large chains like Blockbuster or local shops stocked with thousands of VHS tapes. You had to walk through the aisles, examine the large box covers of the tapes, read the synopsis, and try to find out if the latest release was still available on the shelf. Renting a movie was a commitment. You had to choose a movie, often a debated decision among family members. Then you had to ensure the tape was rewound before returning it. And most importantly, you had to return it on time to avoid expensive late fees. These were challenges and responsibilities that modern entertainment consumers do not face. However, with the rise of streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Disney+, this era has ended. Now we can watch almost any movie or TV show instantly without leaving the sofa, without worrying about rewinding tapes or late fees. Recording music from the radio onto cassette tape. Before digital editing tools, before the ability to download or stream any song you wanted, creating a personal music collection was an endeavor that required ingenuity, patience, and especially perfect timing. The most common method for music lovers to create mixtapes was to record directly from the radio onto cassette tapes. This was a challenging process. You had to sit next to your cassette player, ready in record mode, and eagerly await your favorite song to be broadcast on the radio. When the song started, you had to quickly press the record button. The difference between a perfect recording and a ruined one lay in just a fraction of a second. Many factors could spoil your mixtape. Maybe the DJ talked too much right during the introduction of the song, or sometimes you might accidentally press the wrong button, ruining the recording. You even had to accept that commercials might cut into the middle of the song if you weren't fast enough. But when you completed a perfect mixtape, a collection of songs arranged by mood, or dedicated to a special someone that was a source of personal pride. Now this is completely obsolete. Digital music and streaming platforms like Spotify or YouTube allow users to create playlists with just a few clicks. You can choose the order, the perfect sound quality, and never have to worry about the DJ ruining the recording. Which of these lost entertainment experiences reminds you most of your youth? Share below. Bunny ears antenna. Before cable television became common, the only way to watch TV channels was through wireless signal reception. This required a bunny ears antenna or a larger antenna mounted on the roof. The bunny ears antenna was usually placed right on top of or near the large box TVs. Adjusting them was an inexact art and science. When the signal started to degrade, often due to changing weather or a plane flying overhead, you had to wrestle with the antenna. And this is where the creativity of the 80s came into play. We often had to tape aluminum foil onto the bunny ears. The foil was rolled into a cone shape or taped flat onto the antenna tips in the hope that it would help catch the signal better. Miraculously, sometimes it worked. If the indoor antenna wasn't enough, you had to invest in a large antenna on the roof. Installing and adjusting this antenna was a complicated job, sometimes requiring one person on the roof spinning the antenna, while another person yelled from downstairs to signal if the picture was clearer. Both the bunny ears and the rooftop antenna are symbols of the era when we had to manage technology ourselves. Additionally, for those who owned VCRs in the 80s, connecting it to the TV was also a technical challenge. You needed a device called an RF modulator to connect the VCR to the TV. If you are an antique enthusiast, you might have seen it again, but for most people, it has completely disappeared. Leaded gasoline and cheap prices. Back then, besides self-service stations, there were also many full-service gas stations. At these full-service stations, you just needed to stop the car, roll down the window, and an attendant would come to serve you. They would pump the gas for you, check the oil, windshield washer fluid, and even clean the windshield. In the past, we bought leaded gasoline. Although lead was used to improve engine performance, it has been gradually phased out globally due to serious concerns about air pollution and health hazards, especially since lead is a potent neurotoxin. And of course, the thing that makes us feel oldest when talking about gasoline is the price. Gas prices back then were much cheaper than they are now. You could fill up a muscle car with less than $10. This figure is almost unbelievable for today's generation, as fuel costs have skyrocketed. The combination of attentive service, a toxic fuel type, and super cheap prices created a completely different image of daily life. Did you enjoy this trip down memory lane? Don't forget to hit the hype button right below the video so we can preserve these wonderful memories together. Saturday morning cartoons. If you were a child of the 80s, you understood the sacred meaning of Saturday morning. That was the time that children eagerly awaited most during the week. Why? Because it was the only time to watch favorite cartoon series on the major networks. Watching TV was considered a community ritual. Children often woke up early, turned on the TV, and ate sugary cereal while watching the continuously broadcasted shows. The feeling of sitting comfortably in pajamas without worrying about school or homework and enjoying colorful stories was an essential element of childhood during that era. At that time, VCRs were not common. That meant watching network TV had to happen at specific times. If you were busy enough to forget to turn on the TV or were dragged along shopping by your parents, you would miss the show. There were no on-demand streaming services like Netflix or Disney Plus to rewatch entire seasons anytime. The tradition of Saturday morning cartoons has become a thing of the past. Since at least 2004, the three major American networks have stopped broadcasting cartoon programs under this model. The advent of Cartoon Network, DVDs, and later streaming platforms made Saturday morning cartoons obsolete. Chickenpox parties. This is perhaps one of the child-rearing customs that the younger generation today will find most astonishing. In the 70s and early 80s, before the chickenpox vaccine became widely available, many parents organized chickenpox parties for their children. However, don't think of these parties with birthday cakes, paper hats, or fun games. It wasn't like that at all. The purpose of a chickenpox party was to bring children together so they would intentionally catch chickenpox early. The logic behind this was that most people contracted chickenpox, and generally contracting the disease in childhood was much milder than contracting it as an adult. So how did a chickenpox party happen? Usually children would be taken to visit a child who currently had chickenpox. Parents would try to introduce the virus to their children through contact. This could be as simple as touching the sick child. If your child couldn't attend, sometimes parents would visit themselves, then bring the virus home for their child to be exposed. It sounds strange, but for parents at the time, this was a practical strategy. It allowed them to control when their children got sick and recovered in order to get this over with at a convenient time for the family, rather than the illness appearing unexpectedly during Christmas or another important event. Floppy disks. For those who started using computers in the 80s and 90s, floppy disks were the standard for storing and transferring digital data. The name floppy seems ironic, as they were usually protected by a hard plastic casing, but their core storage material was flexible. Floppy disks came in various sizes. Initially, there were the larger 5.25-inch disks, followed by the more compact and popular 3.5-inch disks, which had a protective metal slider on the outside. The feeling of inserting the disk into the drive and hearing the crrr sound of the computer reading the data was a familiar experience. However, floppy disks had severe limitations. They had very limited storage capacity. For example, a 3.5-inch disk only stored about 1.44 megabytes, a number that is almost meaningless in today's data world. To store a large file, you often had to split it across multiple disks. More importantly, floppy disks were very easily damaged. Just a small stain, nearby magnetic force, or a slight bend could render the data unrecoverable. Losing a floppy disk meant losing your work. Floppy disks have been completely replaced by much more efficient storage solutions. USB flash drives and cloud services offer thousands of times more storage capacity and are much more reliable. Attending aerobics class. The 1980s were not just a time of new technology, but also an era of vibrant and energetic aesthetic fitness. Exercise shifted from rudimentary gyms to high-energy group aerobics classes. Classes like jazzercise became extremely fashionable, attracting millions of people. Group aerobics was a cultural phenomenon, known for loud music, fast rhythms, and coordinated movements. But what made it most memorable was the accompanying fashion. Participants often wore multicolored unitards, tights, and especially brightly colored leg warmers, often neon. Hair was styled big and tied with headbands. This was a bold and dynamic fashion statement, reflecting the lively style of that decade. The popularity of group aerobics has gradually declined. Although aerobics still exists, it no longer holds the dominant position and is no longer accompanied by the dazzling fashion style of the 80s. It is a memory of an age when workout fashion was as bold as life itself. Watching movies at the drive-in theater. Before modern multiplex cinemas became common, the drive-in theater offered a unique entertainment experience. This was a place where you could enjoy the latest movie right in the comfort of your own car. The drive-in experience was very different. Audiences drove into a large parking lot facing a giant screen. The sound was usually transmitted through a small, bulky speaker attached to the car window. It was an ideal place for romantic dates or a fun outing for the whole family. However, the popularity of drive-in theaters has severely declined. Their collapse was due to a combination of economic and technological factors. High land costs in urban areas made maintaining a large parking lot financially unfeasible. Furthermore, fierce competition from modern indoor cinemas and the financial requirement to convert to digital projection technology caused many drive-ins to close. Although a few drive-in theaters still operate as a nostalgic touch, they are no longer common and an essential part of entertainment culture. Using the library card catalog. In the era before the internet and digital databases, finding books in the library was an old-school hunt that required using the physical card catalog. This was a massive system consisting of hundreds, perhaps thousands of small wooden drawers, each filled with thin index cards. Every book in the library had a set of index cards, organized by title, author, and subject. To find a specific book, you had to go to the card catalog area, pull out the drawer containing the first letter of the title or author's name, and flip through the paper cards. On each card, you would find essential information such as the title, author, and most importantly, the call number, a code that pinpointed the exact location of the book on the shelf. The physical act of pulling out a heavy drawer, the rattling sound of the cards, and the smell of old paper in the library are memories the modern generation lacks. This process could be quite time-consuming, especially if you weren't sure exactly what you were looking for. Carrying paper maps. Remember the days when driving to a foreign city was a test of navigation skills and patience? Before GPS and digital map applications, finding your way required relying on physical tools, paper maps, atlases, or in the late 80s and 90s, printing directions from a computer. Carrying paper maps was an indispensable part of every long journey. These maps were often very large, difficult to unfold and difficult to fold back correctly, especially while driving. You had to stop by the side of the road or ask your passenger to be the navigator, trying to read the small lines and symbols. The pressure on the navigator was enormous. Misreading a turn could lead you astray for miles. The bulky atlases were an improvement, but they still required flipping back and forth between pages to follow the route. When home computers became more common, a new method emerged: printing turn-by-turn directions. These detailed printouts, often taped to the dashboard, were a major improvement. But if you missed a turn, the entire plan fell apart, and you had to find a public phone to call home or start over. 35mm film camera. In the modern world of smartphone cameras and unlimited cloud storage, taking pictures with a 35mm film camera is something only nostalgia enthusiasts do. However, in the 80s, it was completely normal. Film cameras required users to manually adjust settings such as aperture and shutter speed, depending on the type of camera. More importantly, each film roll could only take a limited number of pictures, usually 24 or 36 exposures. This created significant caution before pressing the shutter button. You had to think carefully about the composition and the moment, because every click was a cost. But the thing that made this experience most different was the wait. After the film roll was finished, you had to take it to the store for developing. This process could take several days, sometimes even weeks. The feeling of eagerness mixed with anxiety while waiting for the photos to return is a lost emotion. You didn't know if the photo was overexposed, blurry, or even if someone had their eyes closed until you held the printed photos in your hand. Digital cameras and smartphones have completely eliminated this process. They offer the ability to instantly preview photos, nearly unlimited storage, and the ability to share photos in seconds. Using typewriters. Before personal computers and word processing software dominated every office and home, typewriters were the common tool for creating documents. They were the standard in offices, schools, and even at home. Typewriters operated based on a physical mechanism. Every time you pressed a key, a metal bar struck an ink ribbon and imprinted a permanent character onto the paper. The most notable feature of the typewriter was its permanence. There was no undo button. There was no option to delete completely. If you made a spelling mistake or a typo, correction was complicated. You had to use correction tape or correction fluid, then carefully type the character again. Generally, you often had to start the entire page over. The noisy clack, clack, clack of the keys and the ding of the bell signaling the end of the line were characteristic sounds of the office or classroom environment back then. The advent of computers and word processing software replaced typewriters with much more advanced features. What is one thing from the 80s you wish you could bring back? Let us know what you want to see in the next video. Back to the Future. The movie Back to the Future is one of the greatest cinematic works to emerge from the 80s. The original film was released in 1985, taking us back in time to 1955. However, it is part 2 of the film, released in 1989, that makes us feel the cruel passage of time. In Back to the Future, Part 2, the main character, Marty McFly, took a trip to a future that, at the time, felt very distant. That future was the year 2015. The movie created an exciting vision of 2015, a world full of incredible technologies. We saw things like hoverboards, self-lacing shoes, and 3D movie advertisements. In 1989, when the movie premiered, 2015 seemed like a distant horizon, a technological milestone that an entire generation eagerly awaited. The funny thing and the biggest age shock is the fact that 2015 is now the past. At the time the movie was released, imagining the future was certainly difficult. But now, the difficult thing is looking back and realizing how long ago those classic films were released. Daniel-san is older than Mr. Miyagi. And here is the final thing that should shock you about the relentless speed of time. Comparing the ages of the actors from the classic film The Karate Kid. The original movie premiered in 1984, telling the story of Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio, trained by the wise teacher Mr. Miyagi, played by Pat Morita. This is a story of coming of age and martial arts spirit. When the original film was released, Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, was 52 years old in real life. He was the epitome of wisdom, patience, and experience. Now look at Ralph Macchio. When the series Cobra Kai premiered in 2018, Ralph Macchio was 56 years old in real life. The undeniable fact that makes us feel older is that Ralph Macchio, the young Daniel San we watched, is now older than Sensei Mr. Miyagi was when the original story began. This age role reversal is a clear reminder that we have been through many decades. The actor who played the student is now older than the actor who played the wise teacher of yesteryear. Pac-Man is 43 years old. For anyone who grew up in the 80s, Pac-Man is an iconic name in video games. This game was not just a pastime. It created an entire cultural phenomenon known as Pac-Man fever. Pac-Man, the famous arcade game, debuted in May 1980. This simple yet addictive game where you control Pac-Man eating dots and avoiding the four ghosts Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde became an essential part of the arcade centers at the mall. These arcades were once filled with noisy machines playing classic games. What instantly makes us feel old is looking at the actual number. Pac-Man is now 43 years old. This is a shocking fact. To put this number into context, Pac-Man is the same age John F. Kennedy was when he became president. The fact that a revolutionary video game that shaped the childhood of an entire generation is now considered an antique and has entered middle age is a powerful reminder of the passage of time. The children who used to spend coins playing Pac-Man in arcades are now older adults. Star Wars items becoming antiques. The 70s and 80s were the golden age of the Star Wars franchise, especially with the release of The Empire Strikes Back in 1980 and Return of the Jedi in 1983. These films created a huge demand for merchandise, and Star Wars toys and Halloween costumes became the most sought-after items. The toys and costumes we once played with or wore as children are now more than just mementos. They have become collectible items with high value. Especially if they are intact, unopened, their value can reach thousands of dollars. Realizing that the plastic toys we used to destroy as children are now carefully preserved in collectors' display cases is clear evidence of the passage of time. It's not just a change in monetary value, it's a change in status. A common children's toy is now an antique. The memory of eagerly wearing a Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader costume for Halloween, or spending hours playing with the action figures is now contrasted with the reality that those items can be considered an investment. John Candy has been deceased for 29 years. John Candy was an indispensable face in 80s cinema. He was a beloved comedian, starring in many hit films such as National Lampoon's Vacation, Splash, Uncle Buck, The Great Outdoors, and most famously Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. His acting career began in 1973, and he brought countless laughs and memorable characters to audiences. What makes many feel deeply older is the truth about his death. John Candy passed away in 1994 at the age of 43. When we look back at those movies, we still see him in the prime of his career. However, the truth is that he has been gone for 29 years. This period is longer than his entire acting career. That is a powerful contrast regarding the passage of time. A period longer than the time he spent creating the works we still love and re-watch. It makes us realize that a new generation of audiences has grown up without the chance to see new works by John Candy, and our memories of him are now a part of film history.
Thank you for watching. If this trip down memory lane brought a smile to your face and stirred up dear memories, don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons to Back to Yesterday so we can continue to cherish beautiful memories together.